Dave Wilson's breath billowed in the frigid air as he stared at the empty hook in his garage, where his prized snow shovel should have been hanging. The hook that hadn't been empty in 15 winters. "What the hell?" he muttered, rummaging through towers of neatly organized tools. The blizzard of 2023 had ambushed their Midwestern town overnight, burying Pinecrest neighborhood under a stunning 3 feet of snow. Schools were closed, roads impassable, and now, of all days, his shovel was missing. This wasn't just any snow shovel. The heavy-duty steel blade and distinctive candy apple red handle had been his father's last gift before cancer took him. Dave's fingers traced the empty space where the shovel should have been, remembering how his dad had carved DW plus Southwest into the handle, their initials intertwined. "Built to last generations," his father had said with a wink. Like the Wilson men. After searching every corner of his property and finding nothing, Dave resigned himself to using an ancient plastic backup shovel that bent alarmingly under the weight of the wet snow. His driveway was only 1/4 cleared after 2 hours of back-breaking work when he heard it, the distinctive scrape of metal on concrete that any northerner would recognize. Dave straightened, massaging his lower back, and peered through the curtain of gently falling snow. There, across the street, was Karen Thompson, the neighborhood's newest and least popular resident, effortlessly clearing her walkway with a shovel whose candy apple red handle caught the winter sunlight like a beacon. Even from this distance, Dave could make out the carved initials his father's arthritic hands had painstakingly etched into the wood. His shovel, in the hands of the woman who'd filed 3 noise complaints against the Sanders family's autistic son, demanded the Patels remove their ethnic-looking garden gnomes, and had tried to get the neighborhood HOA to ban unsightly basketball hoops from driveways. Dave's fingers tightened around his useless plastic shovel until his knuckles turned white. The memory of when he'd last seen the shovel flashed through his mind. Last night, after the weather alert had come through, he'd used it to clear a path to his bird feeder. Mrs. Finch had called, worried about her cats in the storm, and he'd been distracted. Had he left the garage door open? No, he distinctly remembered closing it, hearing the mechanical whir as it descended. Which meant someone had opened it. Someone had entered his property and taken something that didn't belong to them. Dave watched as Karen expertly maneuvered his shovel, her movements suggesting this wasn't her first time clearing snow. She worked with efficiency, creating a perfect path from her front door to her immaculate driveway. Her house, a recently renovated colonial that she'd painted a controversial shade of gray that violated HOA rules but somehow received an exemption, stood in stark contrast to the winter wonderland surrounding it. As a landscape architect, Dave appreciated the clean lines of her property, but as a neighbor, he'd grown to detest what she represented: entitlement, disregard for community, and a remarkable ability to make rules apply to everyone but herself. He tried to welcome her when she first moved in 6 months ago, bringing over a homemade lasagna and offering neighborhood tips. She'd taken the pasta with a thin smile and closed the door before he could finish his sentence about garbage collection days. The lasagna dish was returned 3 weeks later, uncleaned, with a note suggesting he might want to consider less garlic next time. And now she had his shovel, his father's shovel. Dave set his plastic shovel down and trudged back into his house, leaving a trail of snowy boot prints across his floor. Through his front window, he continued watching Karen, calculating his next move. The neighborhood group chat was already buzzing with news of the blizzard, schools closing, and neighbors offering help to those who needed it. Dave picked up his phone and typed, "Has anyone seen Karen Thompson with a red-handled snow shovel this morning?" Then deleted it. No, this was between him and Karen. He would handle this directly. He pulled on his warmest coat, adjusted his hat, and stepped back out into the snow, determination hardening his features like the ice beneath his boots. Dave trudged across the snow-filled street, rehearsing reasonable words in his head. At 42, he'd resolved most conflicts in his life through calm conversation. Surely even Karen Thompson could be reasoned with. "Morning, Karen," he called, forcing civility into his voice. "I see you found my shovel." Karen paused mid-scrape, In her tailored North Face snow jacket, designer boots, and what appeared to be cashmere-lined gloves, she looked like she'd stepped out of a winter fashion catalog rather than someone clearing snow. Your shovel. Her glossy lips curved into what might have been a smile on someone else. On her, it looked predatory. I don't think so. I found this by the curb this morning. Abandoned property. Dave's rehearsed speech evaporated. By the curb? It was hanging in my locked garage last night. He pointed to the handle. Those are my initials there, DW. And my father's, Southwest. It was the last gift he gave me before he died. Karen squinted at the carved wood, then shrugged. Coincidence. Or maybe you should secure your garage better. She resumed shoveling, turning her back to him. Karen, please. That shovel means a lot to me. Dave stepped closer. I'll even buy you a new one, a better one. She whirled around, the shovel pointed at his chest like a weapon. Are you calling me a thief, Dave Wilson? Because that's a serious accusation. One that my brother-in-law, Chief District Attorney James Hamilton, might have something to say about. Dave's jaw tightened. I'm just asking for my property back. Well, I don't have your property. Her voice dropped to a hiss. But I do have the personal cell numbers of 3 town council members, the police chief, and my security camera footage showing you trespassing on my property right now. So unless you want to spend your snow day explaining yourself to the authorities, I suggest you back away from my shovel and my property. Dave stood his ground. I'll call the police myself. Report the theft. Karen laughed, a sound like ice cracking, over a second-hand snow shovel. During the worst blizzard in a decade, when they're dealing with actual emergencies, she leaned forward, her voice silk-wrapped steel. Be my guest. I'll be sure to mention how the lonely widower next door has been watching my house. How uncomfortable you make me feel. Dave felt the blood drain from his face. His wife Julie's death 3 years ago was still raw territory. That's what I thought, Karen said, reading his expression. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of snow to clear with my new shovel. As Dave retreated across the street, the plastic shovel dragging behind him like defeat, he heard Karen call out, Oh, and Dave, your Christmas lights are against HOA regulations. You might want to take those down before someone reports you. That evening, Dave sat alone in his darkened living room, nursing a whiskey and staring out at the snow-laden neighborhood. The Christmas tree lights he put up, apparently in violation of some HOA rule, cast colorful shadows across his hardwood floors. Julie had loved those lights. The shovel's absence felt larger than it should. It wasn't about the monetary value. It was about his father's hands carving those initials, about connection, about memory, about respect, all things Karen Thompson seemed to lack. Dave's phone buzzed with a weather alert. Temperatures dropping to -15 degrees Fahrenheit tonight, remaining below freezing for the next 2 weeks. The meteorologist called it unprecedented, but Dave had a different word for it. Opportunity. You can't do this, Karen wailed, marching up to Dave. This is because of that stupid shovel, isn't it? You're insane. Dave's smile never wavered. What shovel, Karen? I don't recall you acknowledging any shovel of mine. I'm simply engaging in artistic expression and snow management. Beautiful, isn't it? The way the light catches those ice crystals. By afternoon, the story had spread throughout town. By evening, it had hit local social media. By the next morning, a regional news van was parked at the end of the street. Ice wall revenge goes viral. Man builds 15-foot frozen fortress around neighbor's house, read the headline. The reporter interviewed Dave about his innovative approach to winter art installations, while carefully avoiding any direct references to revenge. Visitors began appearing, first a trickle, then a steady stream. They took selfies in front of the wall. A local coffee shop started selling Karen's Wall hot chocolate specials. Someone created a hashtag Frozen Revenge. On Tuesday morning, Dave opened his garage to find his father's red-handled snow shovel leaning against the wall, a note attached with clear tape. I misunderstood the situation. The shovel is yours. Please make this right. Katie. Dave smiled and placed the shovel back on its rightful hook, but he didn't immediately take down the wall. Instead, he created a wider pathway to Karen's front door and strategically melted sections to improve access to her car. "Consider it a symbol," he told the gathered neighbors as they strung twinkling lights along the top of the modified wall, "of boundaries, of consequences, of community." By the time spring arrived and the last chunks of the Great Wall of Karma melted away, something unexpected had happened. Karen Thompson had changed. It started small, a tentative plate of apology cookies for the Patels, an awkward but sincere conversation with Mrs. Sanders about her son's special needs, a retraction of her complaints about Mrs. Finch's bird feeders. "She's not exactly friendly," Mrs. Finch observed one day as they watched Karen actually helping the Rodriguez children build a snowman. "But she's trying." The following December, when snow again blanketed Pinecrest, every household awoke to find a package on their porch, a brand new professional-grade snow shovel with a bow attached. The gift tags simply read, "Neighbors should help neighbors. KT." Dave hung his in the garage, right next to his father's red-handled one. 2 shovels, 2 stories, and 1 reformed Karen. Sometimes he reflected, watching her awkwardly attending the neighborhood Christmas party. The coldest revenge eventually thaws into something warmer. Few people knew that Dave Wilson, the quiet widower who kept to himself, was actually David Wilson, the award-winning landscape architect whose winter ice installations had been featured in national magazines. The Ice Wizard of the Midwest. One publication had dubbed him, his specialty, structurally complex ice formations that seemed to defy gravity and physics. Dave opened his laptop and pulled up his professional portfolio. There was the 12-foot ice castle he'd built for the Street Pole Winter Carnival, the elaborate frozen waterfall installation for Chicago's Millennium Park, the ice maze for the Aspen Celebrity Charity fundraiser that had made even Jennifer Lawrence gasp. "You want to play games, Karen?" Dave whispered, opening a new design file. "Let's play." By midnight, he had the blueprints. By morning, he had a supply list. By noon, he had called his office to take his accumulated 2 weeks of vacation time, effective immediately. "What's with all the garden hoses?" asked Mike from 2 doors down, as Dave loaded his truck with supplies from the hardware store. "Winter project," Dave replied vaguely. Mike leaned closer. "Heard about the shovel. Karen's a piece of work, isn't she? Nearly got my kid's treehouse torn down because it was visually disruptive to the neighborhood aesthetic." Word had spread. By sunset, Dave had visitors. The Sanders with their autistic son who Karen had complained about, the Patels with their ethnic garden gnomes, elderly Mrs. Finch, whose bird feeders Karen had reported as attracting vermin. "We want to help," Mrs. Finch said simply, handing Dave her coiled garden hose. "Whatever you're planning." On his dining room table, Dave spread out a satellite view of the neighborhood, specifically Karen's corner lot. "I'll need night owls," he told his neighbors, "people who can work in shifts, and absolute discretion." "Will it be legal?" asked Mr. Patel, a cautious man who taught business ethics at the local college. Dave smiled. "Completely. I've checked all the ordinances. No laws against snow management or ice art on public easements, or on our own properties adjacent to hers." "What exactly are we building?" asked Mrs. Sanders. Dave revealed his design. The gathered neighbors gasped, then broke into spontaneous applause. "It's not just revenge," Dave explained, suddenly serious. "It's a message. About community. About consequences." When the impromptu meeting ended, Dave had 8 garden hoses, 15 volunteers, and something he hadn't felt since Julie died: purpose. Operation Karma Freeze began at 1:17 am, when Karen's bedroom lights finally went dark. Dave gave the signal with a flash of his red headlamp, and the night shift sprang into action. Mrs. Finch, 73 and surprisingly spree, monitored Karen's house from her second-story window with military-grade night vision binoculars. "My late husband was a peculiar man with peculiar hobbies," she'd explained. The Patel brothers connected garden hoses to outdoor spigots, creating a water supply network that fed into Dave's custom-modified pressure sprayers. Foundation first, Dave whispered, directing the precise locations where water should be sprayed. The bitter cold transformed water to ice almost instantly, creating the base layer of what would become his masterpiece. By dawn, they had a foot-high perimeter established completely within legal boundaries, running along the public sidewalk in front of Karen's house and along property lines that weren't technically hers. Dave had meticulously researched survey maps at the county clerk's office. Every inch of the ice structure was legal. When Karen left for work at 8:30 am, Dave switched to daylight operations. Neighbors who worked night shifts took over, following his detailed blueprints while he caught a few hours of sleep. The pattern repeated for 5 days. The night teams worked from midnight to dawn, adding height and structural reinforcement. The day teams added artistic details and continued the vertical build while Karen was at work. The wall grew steadily, 5 feet by the second day, 10 feet by the third. Neighbors brought food and coffee. Children were enlisted to pack snow against the base for additional reinforcement. The local high school's shock teacher discreetly loaned specialized tools. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," breathed 16-year-old Zach Sanders on the 4th night, his autism giving him an extraordinary eye for the geometric patterns Dave was incorporating into the ice. Working together, they added a section of translucent ice crystals that would catch the morning sun and project rainbow patterns. By the 5th day, the wall stood 15 feet high, a crystalline fortress that surrounded Karen's house on 3 sides, with just a narrow walkway to her front door. The wall wasn't merely tall, it was an engineering marvel. Dave had incorporated hidden supporting structures. The pure technical achievement would have been impressive enough, but it was the artistry that transformed it into something magical. Dave had sculpted the top of the wall into crenellations like a medieval castle. The outer surface featured intricate geometric patterns that caught and refracted light. Recessed areas held delicate ice sculptures, birds in flight, leaping fish, abstract swirls. "It looks like something from a fairy tale," Mrs. Sanders whispered, gazing up at the wall that now caught the sunset like a massive prism, sending rainbow light dancing across the snow-covered yards. "Or a nightmare, depending on which side you're standing on," added Mike with a grin. The neighborhood children had taken to calling it the Great Wall of Karma. Adults simply called it justice. "How long will it last?" Mr. Patel asked as they admired their completed work. With these temperatures, Dave surveyed his creation with professional pride. "Weeks, maybe a month, and even when it starts to melt, I've built it to do so gradually, not collapse. The drainage channels will prevent flooding." "She comes home early on Saturdays," Mrs. Finch reminded them, checking her surveillance notes. "Tomorrow morning, around 11. Dave nodded. "Perfect. Places everyone." Saturday morning dawned blindingly bright, sunlight glinting off the magnificent ice wall that now dominated Pinecrest neighborhood. Neighbors casually congregated outside, pretending to shovel driveways or check mail while actually waiting for the main event. At precisely 11:07 am, Karen's BMW pulled into her driveway. She was engrossed in a phone call as she exited her car, designer handbag swinging from her elbow. "I told him we absolutely cannot accept those terms," she was saying, her back to the street as she fumbled for her house keys. "He needs to." The moment Karen turned around and saw the wall for the first time became instantly legendary in neighborhood lore. Her phone dropped into the snow. Her jaw followed. The silence lasted precisely 3 seconds before a shriek erupted that set off car alarms as far as 2 blocks away. "What is this?" she screamed, spinning in a full circle to take in the complete encirclement of her property. "Who did this?" Dave stepped forward from the gathered crowd, snow shovel, his backup plastic one, casually resting on his shoulder. "Morning, Karen," he said pleasantly. "Admiring our community ice sculpture project?" "You're white." Karen's face had turned a shade of purple that clashed spectacularly with her red winter coat. "This is vandalism, harassment, imprisonment." "Actually," Dave countered calmly, "it's a neighborhood snow management system and public art installation, fully compliant with all local ordinances. We checked. Extensively. I'll call the police. Karen fumbled for her dropped phone, brushing off snow. Feel free, Dave replied. They've already been by. Officer Rodriguez was particularly impressed with the structural engineering. He took pictures for his kids. This was true. The local police had visited the previous afternoon, unofficially, off-duty, bringing hot chocolate. What followed was a masterclass in futile rage. Karen called the police, who explained no laws were broken, the fire department, who complimented the safety features and proper emergency access, her friends on the town council, two of whom were actually standing in the crowd, pretending not to know her, and finally her brother-in-law, the district attorney, who, according to Mrs. Finch's exceptional eavesdropping abilities, told her to stop bothering him with neighborhood squabbles.